The storm hit the mountain town just after midnight, and Elena Voss was already awake when the knock came. 3 heavy thuds against her clinic door, followed by silence. She grabbed her coat and flashlight, expecting a farmer with a sick calf or a hiker with a twisted ankle. Instead, she found a massive gray wolf lying across her porch, its side torn open, blood soaking into the wooden boards. Rain poured down around it in sheets. Elena froze for only a second, then her training took over. Okay, big guy, let's get you inside, she said softly, though she had no idea how she would move something so large on her own. The wolf lifted its head weakly, and its eyes met hers. They were not the eyes of a frightened animal. They were calm, aware, almost human in their intelligence. Something about that gaze made her chest tighten. She wedged a tarp under its body and pulled with all her strength, dragging it inch by inch into the clinic. By the time she got it onto the exam table, she was soaked and shaking, but the wolf was breathing. For the next 6 hours, Elena worked without stopping. She cleaned deep wounds, stitched torn skin, and gave fluids to fight the blood loss. Twice she thought she had lost him. Twice his heart kept beating anyway, as if refusing to give up. By dawn, the wolf was stable. Elena collapsed into a chair beside the table, exhausted, and stared at the strange, beautiful creature she had saved. She had no idea that the wolf lying before her was not simply a wolf at all. His name was Kane Thorne, and until 3 nights ago, he had been the alpha king of the Black Ridge Pack, a leader respected and feared across the Northern Territories. He had been ambushed during a border patrol, attacked by wolves from a rival pack seeking to weaken his rule. Wounded and outnumbered, he had run for miles in wolf form, crossing into human land, until his body finally gave out at Elena's door. Kane opened his eyes 3 days later, human once more, in a small bed inside the back room of the clinic. His body ached everywhere, but he was alive. A woman sat nearby, reading a folder of notes, unaware he was awake. "You're safe," she said, when she noticed him stir. "You've been through a lot. I found you outside, hurt badly. I did what I could." Kane studied her face for a long moment, and something inside him twisted strangely, painfully. He did not understand it. He had never met this woman in his life, or so he believed. Yet looking at her felt like remembering something he had lost long ago. "Thank you," he said carefully, his voice rough. "I don't remember much. I think I was attacked by an animal while hiking." It was a lie, but an easy one. He could not tell a human stranger that he was a wolf shifter, let alone a king who had just survived an assassination attempt. "You're lucky to be alive," Elena said, setting down her notes. "I'm Elena, by the way. Elena Voss." "Kane," he replied. "Just Kane. Not Alpha, not King. Just a name." Elena smiled, and again that strange pull tugged at his chest, deep and aching, like an old wound reopening. He pushed the feeling aside, telling himself it was simply relief at being alive. Over the following days, as Kane recovered under Elena's care, that pull only grew stronger. He found himself watching the way she moved, the way she spoke gently to frightened animals in her clinic, the way she laughed softly at her own small mistakes. He felt drawn to her in a way he could not explain, a way that unsettled him because it felt oddly familiar, as though he were remembering rather than discovering. Elena, for her part, found herself equally puzzled by her patient. She had cared for wounded animals and injured hikers for years, but never had a stranger's presence affected her so deeply. There were moments she caught herself staring at him, moments when a strange ache rose in her chest for no reason she could name. She dismissed it as concern for a patient. She told herself it meant nothing. On the 5th day, 3 men appeared outside the clinic, dressed in dark clothing, moving with unusual precision and quiet strength. Elena watched from the window, uneasy. When she opened the door, one man, tall, serious, with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "We're looking for our friend," he said. "We heard a hiker was found injured near here." Before Elena could answer, Kane appeared behind her, steadying himself against the doorframe. The moment the men saw him, their postures shifted from tension to visible relief. "Alpha," the tall man said, bowing his head slightly. "We feared the worst." Elena blinked, confused by the strange title. "Alpha?" Kane's expression tightened, caught between two worlds colliding. He had hoped to keep his identity hidden a little longer, to understand the strange pull he felt before revealing the truth. But there was no more hiding now. "There are things I haven't told you," he admitted quietly. The tall man, whose name was Darius, and who served as Kane's most trusted beta, stared at Elena for a long, stunned moment. Slowly, disbelief spread across his face. "It can't be," he murmured. "What can't be?" Elena asked, her unease growing. Darius stepped closer, studying her features, as though searching for something buried beneath the surface. "Your eyes," he said softly, "and your voice. Mara?" Elena stiffened. "My name is Elena." "It was Mara once," Darius said gently. 5 years ago." The name struck something deep inside her, a memory she could not fully grasp, like a word on the tip of her tongue that refused to surface. Her hands trembled slightly. Kane stared at her, his heart pounding with a dread he did not yet understand. "Explain," he said to Darius, though part of him feared the answer already. Darius took a slow breath. "Alpha, 5 years ago, before the alliance negotiations with the Eastern Pac, there was a Luna candidate, a woman named Mara, chosen by fate itself as your true match. At her presentation ceremony, under pressure from the Council to strengthen ties with the Eastern Pac instead, you rejected the bond publicly, in front of the entire gathering." Kane's breath caught. He remembered that day, though the memory had grown distant with time, buried beneath years of duty and regret. He remembered the ceremony, the crushing weight of council pressure, the political alliance he had been told was necessary for the Pac's survival. He remembered making a choice he had never stopped regretting, sacrificing his own fated match for a plan that, in the end, had crumbled anyway when the Eastern Alliance fell apart only months later. He remembered the woman's face that day, young, hopeful, and then utterly devastated, as his rejection shattered something between them forever. But that woman had vanished shortly after, disappearing from Pac records entirely, as though she had never existed. He looked at Elena now, searching for traces of that memory in her face, and slowly, painfully, he began to see it. "No," he whispered, "it's not possible." "She left the territory that same week," Darius said quietly. "We searched for her for months. She was never found, until now." Elena's chest tightened as fragments of forgotten memory clawed their way to the surface, faint and disjointed, but undeniably real. A grand ceremony, a crowd of unfamiliar faces, a man's voice declaring rejection, before hundreds of witnesses. A pain so deep, it felt as though something inside her had been torn away entirely. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't remember any of this." "When a bond is rejected that strongly," Darius explained gently, "it can shatter more than just the connection between two souls. It can suppress the wolf itself, force it into dormancy so complete that even memories fade. You built an entirely new life, because your wolf went silent, and without your wolf, much of that pain and history faded with it." Kane stepped closer, his voice trembling with disbelief and dawning guilt. "Mara." Elena flinched at the name, and yet, somewhere deep within her, something responded to it. Some quiet recognition stirring beneath layers of forgotten pain. "I rejected you," Kane said softly, horror creeping into his voice, as full understanding settled over him. "I broke you, and then I let you disappear, and I never even tried to find out why." Elena said nothing, overwhelmed by the collision of two identities within her. The careful, steady veterinarian she had built herself into, and the fractured echo of a woman named Mara, who had once loved a man who broke her completely. "I need time," she finally whispered. "This is too much." Kane nodded immediately, though his heart ached at her withdrawal. "Take whatever time you need. I won't push you. I owe you that much, at the very least." Over the following days, Elena wrestled with the growing flood of memories returning to her, piece by piece. She remembered her childhood in the Blackridge Pac, her early friendship with a young Kane, before either of them understood what fate had planned for them. She remembered the joy of learning they were destined mates, and the devastating heartbreak of watching that joy crushed beneath political ambition. She also began to feel something else stirring within her, not just memory, but instinct, Her senses sharpened. Her hearing grew unnervingly acute. One night, unable to sleep, she stepped into her backyard and felt something ancient and powerful uncoiling deep inside her, like a long-dormant heartbeat finally beginning to stir again. Her wolf was waking. Cain, meanwhile, used his recovery time to face the consequences of his past decision. He spoke honestly with his counsel, revealing the mistake he had made years earlier and the devastating cost it carried, not just for Elena, but for himself, having spent 5 years half-hollow, never understanding why no other bond had ever felt right. The Eastern Alliance failed regardless, he told his counsel firmly. I sacrificed my true mate for nothing, based on fear and pressure rather than wisdom. I will not make that mistake again. When Elena finally returned to the clinic to face him, she found him standing quietly by the window, watching the mountains with a troubled expression. I remember everything now, she said quietly. Cain turned to her, bracing himself for anger, for rejection in return, for any punishment she deemed fit. I'm not the same woman I was 5 years ago, Elena continued. I built an entire life without knowing who I truly was. And now I have to decide what to do with both halves of myself. I won't ask you to forgive me, Cain said quietly. I only ask that you let me try to make things right, in whatever way you'll allow. Elena studied him for a long moment, searching his face for the same fear and pressure that had driven his choice 5 years earlier. Instead, she found only quiet regret and genuine hope. Show me, she said softly. Show me who you are now, not who you were then. And so Cain did. In the weeks that followed, he returned often to her clinic, not as an alpha demanding loyalty, but as a man seeking redemption. He helped her with the animals under her care, learned about the human life she had built, and slowly, patiently, rebuilt trust between them, not through grand gestures, but through small, honest moments. Elena's wolf continued to awaken, gently guided by Cain's steady presence rather than forced or rushed. She began training with Darius to understand her abilities, discovering a strength and confidence she had never known she carried. Finally, on a clear autumn evening, Cain requested a formal gathering of the pack, not to demand anything, but to correct a wrong from years before. Beneath the same ceremonial grounds where he had once rejected her, he stood before hundreds of pack members, this time with humility rather than political calculation guiding his words. 5 years ago, he said, his voice steady and clear, I stood here and rejected the truest bond I will ever know, out of fear and misguided duty. That choice cost us both years of pain, and I will carry the weight of that mistake for the rest of my life. Tonight, I ask not for forgiveness, but for the chance to make things right. He turned to Elena, extending his hand, not commanding, but simply offering. Mara, Elena, whichever name you choose, I ask you now, freely and honestly, to stand beside me, not because fate demands it, but because I choose you, fully and completely, as I should have chosen you long ago. Elena stepped forward slowly, feeling the weight of both her past and her present settle gently within her, no longer in conflict, but finally at peace with one another. I don't accept you because a bond demands it, she said quietly, taking his hand. I accept you because I see, standing before me, the man I once loved before fear ever came between us. As their hands joined, a quiet warmth spread through the gathered crowd, and somewhere deep within Elena, her wolf settled fully into place, whole and unafraid. She had come to that mountain town as a woman with no memory of who she truly was. She left that ceremony as both Elena and Mara, fully herself at last, standing beside a man who had finally learned the true cost and true value of choosing love over fear.